Beginning in 2020, a relentless succession of drought, wildfire, landslides, and floods put Glenwood Canyon to the ultimate test. The disasters crippled the vital east-west artery, trapping travelers overnight and forcing repeated closures over a grueling 2-year period. This is the behind-the-scenes story of one of the most destructive chapters in the I-70 Mountain Corridor's history, and the remarkable teamwork that brought it back to life. Interstate 70 is Colorado's ultimate east-west lifeline. It's the main artery connecting our biggest cities to our mountain towns and western communities, keeping our economy, tourism, and essential resources moving.
I'm Shoshana Liu. I'm the Executive Director of the Colorado Department of Transportation. So I-70 through Glenwood Canyon, there's a reason it was the last segment of the interstate highway in Colorado to be completed. It was originally kind of a rustic mountain road, right? When it was turned into the interstate, getting it to the condition where the general public could drive it took tangling with nature in a way that is reflected in the ultimate product.
Keith Stefanik, CDOT Chief Engineer. I would say, Glenwood Canyon is one of the roadway marvels across the United States. Every time I go through there, I continue to look at all of the canyons, just the engineering that took to get through there. You have a railroad on one side, you got I-70 on the other side of the Colorado River. The canyon, all of the drainages basically lead down to either I-70, the railroad, in order to get to the Colorado River.
My name is Leanne Veldhuis. I'm the district ranger for the Eagle Holy Cross Ranger District. So the summer of 2020 at the time was one of Colorado's driest and warmest on record. The conditions were there for a large fire year, and in fact that's exactly what happened.
We've got breaking news right now. First at 5, crews are battling this wildfire. It has shut down parts of I-70. Pre-evacuation notices are going out right now.
It really took off really quickly, and when you're in a steep, gnarly canyon, so to speak, if you've ever driven through Glenwood Canyon before, fire is able to really take off in that kind of terrain with that topography and grow big really fast.
When the Grizzly Creek Fire erupted in August of 2020, it disrupted travel for thousands of motorists. Fire, heavy smoke, and falling rock made the interstate entirely unsafe. CDOT crews were among the very first on the scene, monitoring the roadway daily and ensuring the safety of emergency responders.
I'm Trevor Allen. I work for the Colorado Department of Transportation here at Hanging Lake Tunnel. My boss, TJ Blake, called and he said, "Hey, you probably better get back to the canyon." And I remember turning around because we were right on the top of El Pass, and all I saw was a plume of smoke to the west. Traffic was backed up. We had to manipulate our ways through and everything else, and we were able to get in here, make sure our people were okay. And it was just from that point on, it was a massive challenge. So we have a full operations center in here. We have 126 different cameras that we monitor.
Yeah, no, it's burning out that bottom. It's just, we got to watch that too, because if it jumps there, it's going to come up that river. So we need to pay attention.
That was kicking up. You can hear it.
Oh, you can feel the heat off it.
Yeah, I can feel the heat too.
Also, a role was here to try to secure the building. We basically took out fire hoses up on top of the roof, and we basically wetted down all the trees around us, trying to keep the fire from getting in so it didn't compromise the complex.
That year in Colorado saw the 3 largest fires in the state's history. And so although the Grizzly Creek Fire wasn't one of the biggest, in my tenure, it's easily one of the most complex because of how critical the Interstate 70 corridor is.
Mike Goolsby, I was the Region 3 Director and Incident Commander for the Grizzly Creek Fires and the floods. With Glenwood Canyon the way it is, and as tight as it is, when it was coming up the canyon and the winds were blowing and it creates its own wind and other things in the canyon, the fire to jump clear across the Colorado River and end up on the other side of the railroad tracks and take off and head towards Hanging Lake Tunnel, that to me was something that I'll never forget.
As flames spread through the canyon, CDOT was forced to close I-70 completely. Teams had to manage escalating rockfall hazards, while active firefighting efforts raged both in the air and on the ground.
Jory Ernst, Office of Emergency Management for CDOT. The incident command structure is bringing in federal, local, and state government agencies to prepare, respond, and recover from natural disasters or other incidents. And we got the call that the canyon had actually started on fire, so we grabbed our emergency management trailer and headed out to Eagle County where the incident command post was set up for this fire. Typically, CDOT will respond to fires doing traffic control, but with all of our resources across the state, we can usually respond to fires quicker than most.
The Glenwood Canyon closure had wide-reaching impacts across Colorado and beyond.
With Glenwood Canyon, there's no really good way around. You either go way north up to Craig, or you go way south down through Gunnison. And those detours are not designed to take all that interstate traffic. And so when you put all that interstate traffic plus everybody that lives in those communities, it's hugely impactful.
Detours added anywhere from 2.5 to 5 hours of travel time. Every mode of transportation was severely disrupted.
I'm Drew Peterson. I was the West Region Field Manager. In this world of everybody using phone apps for mapping, these two events were really the first really major events in Colorado where we had to actually start really working with the mapping companies because the maps were sending people all kinds of weird ways that once again was not safe for public safety. For that, it was almost kind of pioneering.
Signs and messaging over 500 miles away in neighboring states warned drivers, especially truckers, to avoid the area and take alternative routes.
I'm Andrew Knapp. During the fire and debris flows, I was the resident engineer for the Glenwood Springs residency for CDOT. During the fire, the major vulnerabilities were, direct flame exposure to our structures. Fortunately, the fire moved quickly for the structure's sake.
Massive boulders and debris crashed down onto the highway. Fortunately, structural damage to the interstate was relatively minor, but the volatile, hazardous environment demanded constant monitoring to keep emergency operations safe.
The fire was still raging up above us, and we had already gotten reports from the U.S. Geologic Survey that we could expect very high volumes of debris down this specific drainage. And this is just one of tens of drainages we have throughout the canyon that now had risks that were never imagined when Glenwood Canyon was planned and constructed.
The Grizzly Creek Fire was not fully contained until December, 4 months after it began. In total, the canyon was shut down for more than 2 weeks as the fire scorched over 30,000 acres. But even as the flames were contained, teams worked around the clock to prepare for the canyon's next major threat, the dangerous debris flows that inevitably follow wildfires.
It's on deep foundation.